Welcome to Permission to Be Human, the podcast. I'm your host, Mel Finlater, mother, coach, and curator of Permission to Be Human, the company and community. If you're a mom, know a mom, or want to be a mom, and you crave getting out in the world to make a difference, then you're in the right place. This is a space for moms like you to connect with yourself, your purpose, and your big, audacious dreams. Because when you feel your best, you can better you, your family, and the wider world. Let's do this. I am so excited to share with you today's episode where I interviewed Jena Jauchius, who is all about nature. And if you know me at all, I'm all about nature as well. And Jena's big audacious dream has everything to do with nature and using it in a way where she can be intentional about creating sensory-rich natural play and learning spaces for children and families. And it is absolutely fascinating to hear about how to do this. So I highly recommend you stick around if you're intrigued by nature and how to build sensory-rich spaces. But also, even if that's not your thing, listen up, because it's a fascinating story to hear how Jena is out there and creating the big audacious dream that she is so craving. And just before we dive into the interview, do make sure, if you are a nature lover or would like to benefit from nature to improve your well-being, to check out the previous episode, episode 9, where you are introduced to a 10-day simple challenge with permission to notice nature. All right, over to Jena. So nice to have you here. Jena and I met, how long ago was that anyways?
It's been over a year for sure.
Yeah, spring,
right?
I think last year,
Yeah.
2022. In the work that we've been doing, and I've been following what you've been up to, Jena, and I love it. As anybody who's listened to this podcast will realize, I absolutely love nature and everything that it can do for the health and well-being of everyone.
Yeah.
So the fact that that is the theme of your life pretty much, and the work
It
that
is.
you do, is what makes me really want to have you here, as well as you're a pretty cool person. So that adds to it.
Appreciate that. Right back at you.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, or tell others who don't know
Yeah.
you already, a little bit
Uh-huh.
about you.
A little bit about me. Well, background is I grew up on a small farm outside of Spokane, Washington. My dad's a veterinarian and my mom helped run his practice. So from a really early age, I was surrounded in outdoors and all sorts of different animals, and combine that with just a natural penchant for just wanting to be outside and be in nature pretty much all the time. That's really kind of helped guide my life, I suppose. Fast forward to now, I do a lot of things. My favorite thing is that I'm a mom of twin girls who are now 8 years old. I can't believe it. They're the most beautiful people in my life, and teach me more about life than I think any other experience I've ever had. So I'm really grateful for them. For work, I'm a landscape architect and a nature play expert. And for 23 years now, my entire career, I've been designing children's outdoor nature-based play, learning, and therapeutic environments. And so these are like nature play areas in public parks or early childhood centers, outdoor classrooms. I've done quite a few elementary projects for outdoor classrooms, sensory gardens for parents' backyards. I've even designed a sensory garden for middle school here in town. And yeah, I just love doing that work. And I've just somewhat recently transitioned from more design to more teaching. So I teach folks how to create sensory rich, natural play and learning spaces wherever their kids are, to grow their children's unique minds, bodies, and spirits. And I have a particular focus for children experiencing neurodiversity. So, what does that space look like for a child with autism or sensory processing disorders or ADHD? And how can we tailor and their play and learning landscape to really support who they are and how they experience the world. So that in a nutshell is me.
Amazing, amazing,
Yeah,
and
it's
so
fun.
well stated as well. I
Thanks.
love that. And so, like, from a very young age, nature is just being a part of you and a part of your
Yeah,
life, it sounds like.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my mom's early, memories of me when I was just able to walk was she'd take my older brother and I to the store. And it was like a Lowe's or Home Depot, hardware store that's got a garden center. Well, she'd turn around and I'd disappear off to the garden place. So if she lost me, she knew where to find me. And a couple times, I guess she threatened me, Jay and I are gonna leave here and we're gonna leave you there. And I just turned around and walked back into the plants. And so it's just been kind of an innate thing for me just to connect with the plant world and that sort of thing.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah.
that. You're just gonna go live in the plants at the
Yeah,
store.
I was totally okay with that.
Brilliant, brilliant. I love it. And so, I mean, that kind of answers the question of how this came about. It's really been there since you were a young child. And
Yeah.
throughout life, where has that come up again for you?
Oh, all over the place. It's really how I spent my childhood time is outside and, in our yard. We always had a fairly big garden I was always involved in. Like I said, we always had animals around, whether it was horses or dogs and cats, or I mean, we had camels. We had a camel in our backyard when I was in high school because its mom had rejected it. I guess that happens sometimes. And so we raised it in our yard for a few weeks, and it was just, I mean, it's incredible. And so just my parents were really good about taking us hiking and backpacking and fly fishing, and vacations often revolved around camping at lakes with my extended family, and so it was just what we did.
Yeah.
And looking back, I am like infinitely grateful to my parents for taking the time to do that. And they had the ability to do that, which I'm also really grateful for. There's not a lot of families, I believe, nowadays that maybe have the same ability to have that time and space to do that. So I'm really grateful, and that's one of the foundations that I have as a parent now is to really make time every day for my kids to get outside and to interact with I have a little sensory garden I've been building at our house, and for them to interact in whatever way feels good for them, because they're developing their own relationship with the natural world now that will, just like me, just support them in their adult life, and help guide some of their decisions and how they parent when it comes time for them to be moms as well. So yeah, it's just come up all over the place in my life. I mean, because I love to garden so much, my mom was the one who suggested I look into landscape architecture as a career. I had no idea what it was going into it. And so, kind of blindly, I started the program at Washington State University and fell in love with, very much fell in love with being able to work with plants and design spaces that really allowed for all people just to get closer to nature through garden settings. I just love that aspect of it.
Amazing. So you really like it's quite amazing actually because so many people aren't sure what they want to do, right? For
Yeah,
so long
yeah,
in their life. And it sounds
yeah,
like, well, you might not have been able to put it into words necessarily. As you said, you went in blindly into that, but
yeah,
there was
yeah,
this like innate feeling, it was the words
yeah,
used, that like
yeah,
it's got to be something to do with this, something
yes,
along those
yeah,
lines, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It felt right for sure.
Yeah. And what would you say that nature does for you?
Oh my gosh, it feeds me. There is energy that I get when I'm out in nature, and it doesn't matter whether it's in my backyard or taking a hike in the woods or at the beach. It just gives me energy, and it just kind of brings me back to more of the essence of who I am, because yeah, I mean, everyone's lives is so busy. Mine's no different. And you get kind of whacked out, right? You get like anxious and worried and overwhelmed. And then when you have a moment to get into any sort of green space, for me at least, it just centers me almost immediately. And I mean, quite honestly, sometimes I'll walk through a garden and the little plants will kind of pop up and go. It's like they're greeting me, and I can feel it. It's just really kind of interesting. But so it's just kind of like another friendship, I suppose that I would say
I love
is my time outside. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a relationship, and I know a lot of people say feel the same way. They feel that as well, and that's why there's so many outdoorsy folks is that they feel that relationship so strongly.
That's so beautiful that it's just that relationship directly with nature. And you're right. I mean, the science shows that for everyone, we can
Yeah.
nature, green space or blue space, being the water
Yep.
side of
Yep.
things,
Totally.
will give us more positive emotion, being the
Hmm.
awe and connectedness and joy and all those things, than if we were to sit inside and not see any, or
Yeah.
if we were to sit in a bunch of buildings. And that
Yeah.
makes me think like, oh, I have so many questions, and there's two paths we're going to go down in this conversation, right? So one is about like your journey and that big audacious dream, which I really want to dig into more. And I also have so many questions about the like practical part of the nature and what you're
Sure.
doing, so we're probably gonna go back and forth a little bit, because where I want to jump to is leading from what we just said is, where do we, how do I put it? For the people who don't have access to the
Yeah.
forest that's outside my window,
Right.
right? Or have an apartment, or have a
Yeah.
tiny little garden in their backyard. What would your
Yeah.
suggestion be for them as mums or other
Yeah.
adults, or
Yeah.
or their children,
Yeah.
and how to benefit from nature still?
Yeah. I would just say that nature still is all around you, no matter where you are and where you live in the world. For some, it might take a little more effort to find uh, a significant piece of green space, say, like a park. So a couple of things. If you're in an apartment or other living situation where you don't have a backyard, you have a balcony or at least a window. So let in as much sunlight as possible. Those fluorescent lights are horrible for us. So get the sunlight, get the house plants, green up your balcony if you can. And if you have kiddos, make them a little space on the balcony for their play and learning time, just so they have a space outside that they can access every day. And, maybe you have a little pot of cherry tomatoes, or heck, if they love to eat cucumbers, maybe you can put a cucumber in a pot and have a little climbing vine on your railing or something like that. But just find different ways to bring in nature to your indoor space. And that has just as much benefit, if not more, because it's daily, than say, once a week going out on a hike. I mean, you want just to bring home as much nature as possible into your indoor settings. And yeah, there's lots of wonderful ways to do that. And we could talk about that as a podcast in and of itself, but that's where I would say to start. And then just if you even have 10 minutes to take your kids outside, or just to go outside yourself and sit under a tree, lean against a tree, sit on the ground, you walk around bare feet, because the more direct contact you have with nature, the more it helps you reset your nervous system. And there's a whole scientific body of evidence surrounding this, and you might know it as grounding or earthing, but the more physical contact we have through bare feet on the ground, our butts on the ground, laying on the ground, gardening, any just direct contact with nature, it actually sends us the earth's healing energy and just resets our nervous system. And that's the fastest way. If you're in overwhelm or your child's in overwhelm, put them out on the ground, like seriously, bare feet and all. It's the fastest way to calm them down. And that's
Yeah.
that's why so many of us, I mean, recognize, and it's almost intuitively or innately, we know that when we do that, it's going to help us.
Yeah. I love that. And
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that does not like to wear shoes very often.
Me neither.
And I'm like kind
Never
of
have.
forced, you know, there's like the reality of life, and cement doesn't feel very nice and it gets very hot and whatever. So I
Yeah.
do obviously have shoes that I wear a lot, but I'm so lucky because I work at home. I wander around all the time in and out without shoes on. I'm sure my house is much dirtier for it, but I don't care. And my job, apart from this work that I'm doing with the permission to be human, coaching and podcasts and community and such, I also work at a nature preschool, which is also
Awesome.
where my appeal, of all of your work comes from. So I'm sure a lot of my questions will relate to that too. But I'm so lucky because in that setting, I take my shoes off frequently. Like I'm actually rarely wearing them. And the kids are
Awesome.
like, the one of the girls, yesterday, we walked over to just a big grass field at the high school, and we have a and we all just started taking our shoes off. And she was looking at me like, "Can I take my shoes off?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can take your shoes off." Like, it feels so funny on my toes, like that grass in between, I'm talking her through it. I was like, what do you think it would feel like on your feet? And she's like, I don't know. Can I feel it? I was like, yeah. So she takes her shoes off and then she has her socks on and she's like, okay. And then she goes to the next level and she's like, oh, she's like, my dad doesn't let me take my shoes off outside. And but she was so pleased, right? This
Yeah.
pleasure coming over her face that one, she was doing something that she wasn't necessarily always allowed to do
Totally.
in a safe setting. We knew it was grass. It was literally a big field of grass. But also, that she was able to ground, as you say, that
Yeah.
such an interesting sensory experience to have different
Yeah.
things on your feet, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's how we used to do things, right?
yeah.
As we've evolved, that's how we've been.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's nothing new or revolutionary. It's actually ancient. So
Yeah.
the more we can do that, the better off we are.
Yeah.
Good
Amazing.
for her.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And we get that. And that's not a one-off, right? We get it
I know.
frequently.
I know.
As well as like this amazing little one that says, when we go through the rules, when we kind of go to a new space, we check in. And there's always one that says, um, no climbing trees. And I kind of look at him. He says the same one every single time. And I was like, you can climb a tree. And
So, because he wants to
he's like,
really climb a tree.
what? It's like, yeah, go for it. And the first thing he does is go and
Yep.
try. And they're like 3, right? They can't go very high, and we don't help
Right.
them. They have to be able to
Right.
do it themselves. We help them by guiding or being underneath,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
but we don't lift. And it's wonderful. It's just so glorious to watch and
Yeah.
listen to these
Yeah.
kids just understand that, like I can interact
Yeah.
with this nature. It's insane.
Oh gosh. And the value that that little man's getting by climbing a tree
Yeah. Yeah.
is just tremendous.
It's great. We need to find some really good climbing trees nearby. That's for my
Yeah.
kids too. And for me, I love climbing a
I
tree.
know.
Like
I know.
one of my big memories from our garden that we had in England when we lived there was we had this amazing old apple tree that got so many apples,
Nice.
but a lot of them, because it hadn't been pruned properly over the years, were quite, they were at the top of the apple tree. It wasn't
Uh-huh.
super high, but it was a decent size. And I would climb up to like get them, and then Eric would stand underneath me, and I'd be like, "Okay, here you go," and like drop them down, and he'd try to catch them and put them in the thing. But it was and I remember my little one, she was probably only like 2 at the time, looking at me like, "Mama, you're in a tree." Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Her bare
Nice.
feet just like up in the tree. And it just brought me so much joy because it brings back that playfulness that kids do have naturally
Oh
when they
yeah.
go outside. We don't have to force it. They just have it. They just do it,
Yep.
right? We have to
Yep.
force it in
Yeah.
ourselves because we've been kind of trained out of it, I think.
We
But
have.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I say like kids are our greatest teachers. And if we just um stop the busyness for a little while in our own lives and pay attention to what they're doing, there is so much going on and they can help reconnect us to that playful part in us that is still there and very much alive, but we've just kind of shut them away for all sorts of different reasons as adults, but it's very much an important part of us still. And we need to reconnect with them
yeah,
as much as possible. Yeah.
for sure. I feel really grateful for my daughter, who is my constant reminder of nature. I think she's a lot like you were. Like
Uh-huh.
she will come home fretting after school and want to go in. And if we go take her into the woods, even just to walk the dog,
Yeah.
she resets completely. And she's just like
Yeah.
one with everything that she sees. She could name
Yeah.
any plant. I
Yeah.
can't.
Nice.
She
Good
can,
for her.
right?
Good for
And
her.
she just absolutely comes alive when she's in the woods.
All
And
right.
it's so beautiful to see, right?
Awesome.
She just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's slower. Like life just slows
Mhm.
down, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even though I'm like, walk my dog through the woods every day, I will go out on a mission. I'm get this done. I got to
I
get
know.
back. I got to do this. I got to do that. And then I get in the woods and I walk slower.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
look at that. And especially if you remember to look up, right? Trees are so cool if you like lie on the ground and look up at them. One of my
Yes.
favorite things.
Yeah.
I have a lot of pictures of trees from down below. But
Yeah. I love
yeah.
that. Yeah. I love that nature invite. It's just such a wonderful invitation for us to uh, just live differently because that pace, I think, is where a lot of the magic within us resides. And when we can be at that pace with our thoughts and connecting with ourselves and connecting with our environments, then it just kind of loosens up those pathways for it to come out. Kids already know that. They come out of the they come out knowing that already. And they probably are so confused by adults' way of life. Like it doesn't make sense to me. Um, so yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, the more we can
exactly.
do that as moms and busy people, then um yeah, there's so much magic within each and every one of us and so many beautiful gifts that we don't allow ourselves to um just allow them to come out.
Mm,
And yeah, nature helps us do that.
yeah. And I almost want to say, like, at the end, I'm going to ask you about a tip, but I feel like it's right there. Just like get out in nature, right?
Yeah, do it. Yeah, even if it's 10 minutes a day, just make it a habit. And when you can, get out for another 10 minutes or an hour. If you can sneak an hour in, um, you never know what's going to happen on the other side of that hour. You might have some brilliant idea come into your mind and something that's maybe related to your passion or those big audacious dreams that thank you, Mel, for helping moms connect with those because that is really like that makes life interesting. It makes life worth living. It makes the world a better place. And if we all lived with your perspective on really working on our gifts and our messages and things like this, oh my gosh, can you imagine what kind of world we'd be creating for our kids? Holy
Yeah.
moly.
We would change the
It'd
world.
just,
We are
yeah,
changing
it
the
would
world
be.
just by being ourselves, right? Like our
Yeah,
full,
absolutely.
complete selves, not
Yes.
resisting the things that we crave in order to sacrifice over here, but our
Yeah,
actual full and complete selves, right?
absolutely. Yeah. 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 If we do that for ourselves and we model that for our kids, then it's a generational gift.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, so important.
Yeah. So tell me more about your journey to get to that point where you realize that this is, well, firstly, what is the big audacious dream? And tell me about the journey to get there for you.
You know, I have a big audacious dream, but I feel like there's one even beyond that.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say right now it's kind of twofold. One is that I've got this beautiful business, N is for nature play. Just founded it. Can't remember, maybe it was 2 years ago now that it became official. But my goal for that is really bringing this information about children's senses and how they experience the world and how we can really create and tailor play and learning landscapes, nature based, of course, that really support who, like you just said, who they are as individuals, as unique minds, bodies, and spirits, and really creating supportive places for these kids to grow and experience their childhood. And I want to support as many people as possible through this work because it's so necessary. And I keep hearing over and over again that this information isn't out there. And it's out in pieces and parts, but you really have to know how to collect it and bring it all together and translate it into your space. And so I do that for people. And so just supporting as many people as possible through that. But at the same time, my big audacious dream with my kids is to support them in every way possible so that they, I guess they don't, they're more connected with who they are as individuals and really support them in following their curiosities, because in each of our curiosities is that nugget of the next step. What's the next step in my biggest path, in my highest path? And so if I can support them in that from such an early age, holy moly, they're going to just thrive as adults. Like that's really what I want for them. And that's, I see as my biggest job as their mom is to just recognize their uniqueness, their individuality, their different experiences in the world, and how their emotions need to I don't know, just how to express their emotions in a healthy way, which they're really good at. They're really good at communicating. So part of the work for me is already done because they're so good at communicating their needs and that sort of thing. That helps out a lot. But yeah, right now those are my two big audacious dreams, and it's yeah, I wake up feeling grateful every day that I'm at where I am in life with the knowledge and experience I have in life, because I've been through all sorts of things that help me to do both at the same time. It's awesome.
That's amazing. That both of those are so beautiful. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're the same thing. I think, yes, your end for
Yes.
nature is the how of it, but the
Yeah.
big dream, what I'm hearing is the big dream is to enable young people, especially, to follow their curiosities and find their
Yes.
highest path, or however you want
Yeah.
to phrase it, right?
Yeah. All right. Thank you for making it more efficient for me. Totally. I totally agree.
Because it is, right?
It is.
It's that same ultimate thing that it seems like you're trying to do. And your beautiful children are, I'm assuming, the inspiration to be able to do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. They are. They
and the
are
perfect
totally.
guinea pigs.
And they love being the guinea pigs. Like I'll
Exactly.
have, in my design work, I'll have designed this really fun, nature-based play area, and they get to go test it out before like the kids using it get to. So they think they've got the fast track to the fun places. So yeah, and they've given me some constructive criticism as well, like things I can do better, and I absolutely listen to them because they're experts.
Yeah,
So
that's great. They're like your focus group then, right? Like that's what
they
people
are.
need.
They're
If you're testing something
yeah,
out, you need a focus group to tell you what's good,
yeah,
what's not so good. Like, mom, come on. Like that's not
yeah.
gonna work.
So one of the younger daughter, she's very honest, very forthcoming with her opinion. She's like, "Mom, this one you really could have done better, but there are things that I do like about it." Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll learn from that.
Brilliant. I
So
love that.
funny.
I love that. So tell us a bit about, teach us a bit. Teach us a bit about
Hmm,
what is important in this nature space, what makes it work,
yeah,
how does it flow, however you want to
yeah.
take that question.
So, my work as a landscape architect is a little different from other nature-based designers because I really hone in on the sensory experience of the places for the children. And it really comes down to the reason why I do that is because when you can create a sensory rich environment that speaks to children's senses in all the right ways, then it really calms their nervous system and puts them in a place where they can achieve a state of flow very easily, because that's a natural childhood state. I always say they can play to their greatest ability, they can learn to their greatest potential, and they can connect in the most deep and meaningful ways that they're able to. And so I'm really focused on sensory systems. And I always say that children um, they have more than the five physical senses. Like we all know, like our touch, sight, touch, taste, smell, and sound, right? Those are the five classic we all know and love. We're very familiar with them. But children have more physical senses, we all do, than just those five. And so there's actually two more that are just as important to children's ability to understand the world, to navigate their environments, and to thrive in their daily lives. And so um, the sixth would be our vestibular system, and it's located in our inner ear, and it has to do with our body awareness relative to the gravitational pull. So our ability to understand, are we right side up, upside down, or sideways? That's our vestibular system at work. And so swinging and spinning and rocking and rolling down a grassy lawn, running and climbing and crawling, all of those where the bodies are really moving, big body movements, and maybe getting off center to really understand where we're at relative to gravity. That's our vestibular system. So kids need that to develop really good body confidence and to be able to move their bodies in these big ways and to feel safe in their bodies doing that. And then the seventh one is really interesting. It has to do with a couple of things. It's called proprioception, or our proprioceptive system. And so the first thing it has to do with is it's our body awareness system. So where are my limbs are at relative to my body? Like this is like when you close your eyes and touch your index finger to your nose. That's your proprioceptive system telling you where your nose is at and where your finger's at, right? And it also tells us where our bodies are at relative to the things around us in our environments. So a child being able to get dropped, parent taking a child to the to their child care center, they're able to walk through the door, through the hallway to find their little seat on the mat, take off their shoes. That's all our proprioceptive system. And it also has to do, the other thing it does is it has to do with the use of force or pressure to do activities like coloring with a crayon. So you can only apply so much pressure with your fingers until it breaks. And so an example I always give is I'm really thirsty. There's a paper cup of water in front of me, and it's my proprioceptive system that tells me how to take a drink. So my brain will communicate to my muscles and tendons and joints and ligaments all the way down to my fingertips the pressure my fingers need to pick up that paper cup of water without squishing it or without letting it slide through my fingers. And so, like tying one's shoes using zippers, using gardening tools, picking up watering cans where you're really putting pressure on the joints. These sorts of pulling a wagon, pushing a wheelbarrow. These activities really feed the proprioceptive system in really wonderful ways. And so all kids need all sensory systems fed in different ways into different intensities. And you can actually tailor their play and learning environments to support them in all the ways they need individually, even if you have a big group of kids. So it's really wonderful. And it gives when people really start understanding the senses and how children use their senses to understand their environments and for play and learning and all these wonderful things, it really gives people a new lens to look through to see incredible value in the space they have, but also it allows them to see maybe where there might be gaps in sensory stimulation. And then they can remedy that through different activities or maybe different accessories for a certain, like maybe their mud kitchen needs a few other things, or maybe they need a water play area. So you can start to see gaps in the sensory value. And then you can fill those gaps, and every child in your care will be able to find exactly what they need to feed their body in all the right ways.
I love that. And that's new information, I think, for a lot of people. And I think
It
until you
is.
told me that at another time, it is like I was like, oh yeah, I guess those that makes sense. Or I wouldn't have
It
known
makes
the words
sense.
for it, right?
Sure.
And that's where like a hammock feels so good.
Oh
And
my gosh.
oh
Yes.
yeah, the kids love rolling down the hill. That's like their favorite thing to do at our, our center, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's glorious. So I'm wondering, like, so what do we do with that? Almost could we like design together within the limits we have of this conversation a little
Hmm.
garden right now? Like, what would that look like? We've
Yeah.
got a square space in the back of our house or childcare center.
Yep.
What do we do with it? Let's say it's
Well,
blank
the first,
for now.
yeah, the first big question is it focuses on the kids that are going to be using the space. And so you really need to understand what their needs are their developmental needs, their sensory needs. Do they have any sensory sensitivities? Some kids, they may not like their bare feet on the ground, which means they have like tactile defensiveness. They don't like to touch certain things, which and they're hypersensitive. So you might have to tailor a space or several spaces to that. Um, whatever your kids love to do? What do your kids get lost in and can spend hours in the state of flow doing without any further guidance from an adult? And so that will give you clues on what spaces that you can bring to your environment to give children the activities they really want to have. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know. Do we have a imaginary child we want to work with?
You can work with my kids if you want.
Okay,
I'll take
yeah,
some
give them.
benefit from it.
Yeah, bring it, Mel. What do you got?
Okay, so we've got an 8-year-old girl. What were some of your questions? So really loves
Yeah, what she love to do.
she loves picking up sand, making little balls with it, and kind of making it stick, and then
Mhm.
selling it to someone to throw at something. She,
Entrepreneurial spirit.
yeah, exactly. You see, it costs a pine cone, I think, usually, but anything like fairy garden-esque, little tiny things that she can move
Yeah,
around and do like little fine motor stuff.
yeah.
Loves that, gets really excited, gets like jittery excited about stuff like that. Loves the swing set. Most recently has actually a vision impairment that
Okay.
has meant that the gross motor stuff skills have taken a longer time, and those I can't even remember the words of the last two things you said. Those are further behind. Actually, those sensory
Okay.
needs are catching up in how
Okay.
she knows her body in space. But she's
Yeah.
now loving exploring that now that she has glasses
Okay.
that are catching the one eye up to the other, essentially. So
Yeah.
test it
Okay.
off. So that's probably her. And then I have a 5-year-old boy who's like the type of kid who grabs his bike, who literally like just learned how to ride a two-wheel pedal bike after his balance one. Well, it was officially last year, but really only this year that we properly got it. And he'll go up and down our long driveway for ages and go off ramps and up like he will take risk, put it that way.
Okay.
He is very good awareness of his body and where it is in space, and falls all the time and rarely hurts himself kind of guy.
Nice.
um and likes things where he gets to do that kind of stuff, jump off of things, and
Okay.
um yeah, that kind of side of things.
Cool.
Okay,
Yeah. So just the two?
just the two.
Okay.
You can add a
All
dog in
right.
there if you want.
Well, that's a reality too, right? For good or for bad.
Yeah,
No, yeah, I have dogs too. Okay, so I just jotted down a few ideas
yeah,
that would work for both kids
yeah,
because ultimately the goal is we want all kids to play together regardless of ability, diversity, blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
So let's start with your daughter. So when you mentioned she's got a vision impairment, but she loves to swing. So the act of swinging, the vestibular system, and the and vision or sight, they are actually interconnected.
yeah,
And so when you're like, think about when you're swinging and you fix your eyes on a certain point on the horizon. So you're actually connecting those two systems by doing that activity. So just by swinging, she's actually helping her visual system.
yeah.
So I
That's
would
actually
say,
her homework. Go on the swing from her
oh,
vision
perfect.
therapist. I was like,
All
all right,
right.
go on the swing. Yeah,
Yeah, so whether you have one in your yard or maybe you have one, maybe you don't have space for that, but you have one down the road at the park, I would say get her on the swing as often as she wants to. The fairy garden, absolutely. And if she's so intrigued and gets jittery by that, then really play that up. Just here in my house, my younger daughter really loves fairy gardens as well. And so we've got a couple different pots. And just this spring, we constructed, and you probably saw it on my Facebook, this beautiful arbor. I mean, it was $300. It was an investment on Amazon. And my dad came and helped put it up with the kids. But it's this arbor that creates this space. And then we've got some thornless climbing roses starting to climb up it. So And, when it's so hot this summer, I'll throw a shade cloth over the top of it to give her some shade. But really, that gives that activity real space in your yard because it's got that shelter feeling. It's kind of got a cozy feeling, and then you can really play up the accessories of the space. Mine is kind of ringed with lavender that's just starting to bloom. And so it's becoming a really beautiful space, even though it's kind of young and still forming. So I would say really play up those things that she really loves to do. The other thing is what you mentioned about the sand play and the pine cones. You could do a couple things. So you could have a sand play area, but have water next to it, whether it's a hose or a water table or what have you, so that she can combine those two elements, and the play value and the learning value just goes exponentially when you combine mud and sand and water. And then, of course, have all sorts of different tools she can use. And then the other thing there would be a loose parts play area. And that is where loose parts are like things that kids can manipulate to build and, break them down and rebuild again. And so outside loose parts are like branches and stones and feathers and seed pods and all these things that they can find in nature to use to build things or create things. And so loose parts play would be for her. The great thing is that your son, maybe he won't be into fairy gardens so much, but he'll find a tremendous value in swings, sand and water play, and loose parts. But maybe for him, you might throw in some, if you've got some access to some stumps, log stumps or something like that, bury those in the ground just a little bit to give him some stability and have them at different heights, and those can be his climbing logs and balancing logs and jumping off logs. And maybe you want them next to kind of a bark area or even the lawn area. And of course, in a childcare setting, there's safety zones and fall zones that would apply. But in a home application, you can do what you want, just keeping your child's safety in mind. So that's what I mean, and that would make for a pretty irresistible outdoor place for them. And even if you had um, a place where kind of nature can be messy or the garden can be messy, where they can go in and do whatever they want. That's always a value for kids. Maybe they make a little nook in there, like a little cozy space, and it's a little hidey hole den. Your son with his, if he wants to have some imaginative time or whatever, all kids love those little cozy spaces too. So right there, that's a good starter
I love that.
for
Thank
you and
you.
your
Yeah,
kiddos.
that's
Yeah.
that's so useful and I think helpful for anyone, really. And what comes to mind is I think there's probably two, maybe there's more, but two type of people are coming to mind that might be listening, right? There might be the people who just don't know where to start, right?
Yeah.
And I think what you just mentioned gave ideas. So then they start to, the creativity can start to move. Okay, think of what my individual kids want and what do they like, and let's do something with that. And then there's the people like me who have so many ideas that it's incredibly overwhelming because I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, let's do this and then 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 this. Um,
Yeah.
and I wonder what you would say to those two different types of people.
I always say to start simply, and really focus on one or maybe two things for now, if you're just getting going. Because it's really easy and I'm more of the second person as well. Like I'll have all sorts of ideas and want to do it all, but then I run out of energy and I only get things halfway done, or I finish it and it becomes something maintenance wise is beyond my capabilities. And so start small and really start with something that you know will be irresistible for your kids and focus on that and get it to a place where it's something that they naturally go to, yeah, they don't need the iPad right now. They'd rather go outside and play in their fairy garden or climb on their logs or something like that. Because everything that you do, I mean, everything in life takes a little bit of care and maintenance, but when you start small, then you really get a sense about what that means for you. Because it might mean a little extra weeding in your day. It might mean maybe you teach your kids how to do some weeding too. It's their space as well. Um, but really, like that's the sustainable route is just pick pick one or two things that you know will benefit them, you know that they will love, and see how that fits for you as well, because that's the last thing that, as busy moms we want to do is continually add to our plate, right? On the flip side, it's going to get you outside more too, playing with your kids. Maybe you're outside and you've got your garden space or something, and you can garden while they play. And I always call that, like, for parents, that's like parallel play. You're doing your thing that feeds you, they're doing their thing that feeds them, and you're kind of doing it together, and there's still connection happening. Um, and so that is the other flip side to doing natural play and learning for your kids. It actually helps you as well, because, like, every night for the last couple weeks, it's been nice, here in Spokane, Washington. So I'll take my book outside, and while the kids are doing something, I'll read a book with my bare feet on the ground, and, like, it really helps me go to sleep after that. And so it has a ton of benefit for parents as well, when their kids are outside more, they have a beautiful space to be in. And you can even add a few things for yourself. Maybe it's that hammock, maybe it's an Adirondack chair, maybe it's a little garden space for you too. But, think about yourself when you're doing this too. What would make you want to go outside more?
Yeah, which is what was coming to my mind. A couple things. Firstly, I think this is so applicable to moms listening who are are starting to work on that big audacious dream. They need the time and space. It's coming up to
Yeah,
summer right now. We are in summer holidays and
yeah,
we're not going to get as much me time as we hopefully have
totally.
gotten through the rest of the year. And I can see such value in creating a space like this with your kids that, yes, it's like an initial investment of time, money, energy, all those things. And it means that they're going to, one, want to go outside and play with you, fill each of your buckets, and
Hmm.
you'll be able to step away because they're so engrossed in your backyard and the garden
Hmm.
that you can
Yeah,
take that space to do what it is you need to do. And sometimes that might be
yeah,
your play outside, like you say, or your work outside. And it might be that actually I need to come in and have this conversation with you, right?
right.
Well,
Yeah.
my kid is out playing outside.
Hmm.
And so I can see real benefit that. And a lot of the conversations I have with moms is around this guilt that we can feel for needing
Mm,
to take time away from their kids to do their
yeah.
work, quote unquote, or to
Yes.
do those things that are just outside of their kids or can be easily seen that way, even though they all connect. Um,
Hmm.
and this is one way that maybe would help with that because we know we're meeting all
Yeah.
the needs of our kids
Yeah.
without us
We are.
always having to be there. We should definitely be there sometimes, don't get me wrong, but we can also step away and let them meet their
Yeah.
needs over there while
How
I
else
do
are
this.
they going to gain their independence and,
Yeah,
um, you know, be able to explore their environments in the ways that works for them?
yeah,
It's helpful for parents to step away from that and just to let their kids guide themselves for a while.
yeah.
And it's also okay for kids to be bored.
Hmm.
They might go outside for a little bit and come back in, Mom, I'm bored. When I did that when I was a little kid, I was told to go pick rocks out of the garden. So I learned real fast not to say that to my parents because, yeah. Um, and so it's okay for kids to be bored too. You don't have to entertain them all the time. You shouldn't, because when kids become bored, and I was just talking with this about this yesterday with somebody. That's actually a good thing, because that means they've exhausted everything they know how to do, every way they know how to use a space. Um, and it opens the door for their imagination to come out and to really test things out, try new things. And, I always say, and I think it was probably Einstein who said it, that imagination is children's superpower, or he said something along that line. And totally believe it. And it lies just on the other side of boredom. So let your kids be bored. Don't entertain them.
Yeah,
Only if you choose to, but really give them a lot of space and time to do things for themselves.
yeah,
Because that is just, there's so much on the other side of boredom that really they need to go through that process to find.
yeah,
And there's a lot of seeds of who they are as individuals, their interests. They might find new things that really intrigue them. Curiosity and wonder and awe lie on the other side of boredom oftentimes. And we as parents, we've experienced that too. Um, so let your kids go through that. It's a gift.
Yeah, I love that. And where it leads my mind is actually to the parent, right? So, yes, we experienced that as kids, but how often do we as adults now allow ourselves
Yeah.
to be bored? Now that phones exist,
Rarely.
almost
Yeah.
never,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because I'm
Exactly.
as soon as I'm like, I don't know what to do, you just pick up your phone, right? And I'm so
Uh-huh.
conscious of trying not to do that, but it's really, really hard. And
Yeah.
it's not just about technology. We do that with something else if the phone wasn't there, right?
Sure.
But
Sure.
when do we as adults allow ourselves to be bored? And if at the end of boredom is our creativity and all of that, then actually maybe our first step is be bored, right?
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of scary. That
Yeah.
makes me go, "Oh, I don't want to be bored. Like I don't have time to be bored."
Yeah, I'm wasting time if I'm doing that. Yeah. There's
Exactly.
nothing good coming from this, but there will be. There
Yeah,
will be, and you have no
exactly.
idea until you allow yourself that. And there might be things that you're meant to do in this life that lies on the other side of that time being bored and that time not programmed with something. And so yeah, it's so important for us to
Yeah.
do that as well. You're right on, Mel.
And sometimes like I don't remember the last time I thought I'm bored, but the frustration that comes alongside bored comes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it feels like we're not getting anywhere because of that. And
yeah,
actually, you're right. Like it's the other side of that that we will start to. So for the moms that aren't feeling connected to their big ice stream, they're like, I have no idea. I know I feel
yeah,
stuck. I don't feel
yeah,
good.
yeah,
It's I'm not me, like all those things. But in
yeah,
order to get to the other side, we first have to feel that, right? First,
yeah,
we have to be frustrated. First, we have to allow ourselves the space to sit in that and be
yeah,
like, oh, this does not feel comfortable, right?
yeah,
And boredom
yeah.
doesn't feel comfortable either.
No, it,
And there are things you can do within that to like get yourself mindfulness, get yourself grounded and such to
mhm.
then be able to move on out of it.
Yeah,
But it is on the
yeah,
other side. I think that's a great reminder. It's the other side of that
yeah,
boredom and frustration and space that we need
yeah,
to take that we will come
yeah,
to who
yeah,
knows what.
yeah. I mean, you can kind
Right.
of think of it like a portal or a doorway. You have to go through that to find what's on the other side for you. And when you were talking, it made me, I guess, realize that boredom looks different for adults. We're bored in our lives, and we may not even be able to put the words to it. We're maybe unsatisfied, and maybe we're going through our routines, and it's unfulfilling, and that's boredom. That's boredom
Yeah.
with our lives, and that is a huge indication that something's amiss, a little off, and we need to be curious and explore what that is, because in that is your pathway to your audacious dream.
It's like boredom plus curiosity equals big audacious dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Equals big things happening for people.
Exactly. And for the
Yeah.
world, right? Because like
Yes.
my big thing, the whole reason I do all of this is yes, I love helping the individuals and the families and the people that come away, but it's the fact that if we could all be our best selves, the world will be so much better, so
Oh
much
my
better,
gosh.
right?
It would be
Especially moms. We have
unrecognizable.
these gifts, this
Mhm.
ability, this way of being that will are like the caretakers of the world, right? Of
Yeah.
nature and the
Yeah.
people and the animals and everything in between, right?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
we allow ourselves to dream of what we could do to help be
Hmm.
ourselves and to be
Yeah.
ourselves, which will, in order to be ourselves, we also have purpose and meaning, and we're going to end up serving isn't the right word, but making a difference elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's endless possibilities, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful too that people realize that your audacious dream is made up of a lot of little steps. And so
Hmm.
you don't have to know the big picture, and you won't know the big picture because I think our brains are too small to realize what our potential is because we only know so much about our very small lives. But we are so much greater than what we understand through our mental brain. And so if you can follow your curiosity and just take little steps, like and that's the way I'm going through my life. And it's slow, and sometimes it feels like a trudge. But then there's these breakthroughs like, holy cow, I didn't know I was going to do this in my life. I had no idea when I was a child that, I would be in this part of my life. And I'm so surprised and thankful and curious what the next step is. And so that is like, to me, that's the probably, at least from my perspective, it's the way, or the only way that I can see to get to my big audacious dream, is just to take these little steps that feel good, that are fun, that can feel surprising and unexpected. Um, but that's the beauty in life for me, is this process.
And that it can be your big audacious dream. So often we can't put words on it,
Yeah.
right? And I change my words all the time of what that
Yeah.
is because it is big. And like you say, our brains just can't get that big all like
Yeah.
ever. But
Yeah.
often, in my and I can feel it. I know what it is that I want in the world. I know
Mhm.
what I can feel it now, but it's taken me a long time to get to that point too, right?
Yeah.
But I can feel it now, and I have some words that I put on it, which for me is now a together world. That's what I want to create, is a together world.
Yay.
And all the
Love that.
hows of how to get there, those are all tiny
Yeah.
steps, and I'm going to
Yeah.
switch directions, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. But it doesn't matter because it's all leading towards this world that I can't create on my own. It will
Yeah.
not happen in my lifetime, which is a weird way to think about it.
I know.
But I will help take steps towards that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my
You
goal
are,
in life, is that
you're
it's
part of the shift.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we need for moms. Okay. So the other question that came to my mind as we are going to finish up soon, but as we were talking about designing this garden space for kids, if you were designing it for a mom listening
Hmm.
and all of our needs, what would that look like?
Mm. Oh, for the mom. Yeah. Um, well, I would start with, what do you love to do? What do you love to do? Whether it's inside or outside. Do you love to read books? How can you do that outside? Do you love to cook? Well, what if you had a little edible garden space that you grew, some fun vegetables or whatever it is that you can use in the kitchen? Um, Water, like a little water fountain, is always really therapeutic. Helps, calm our nervous system. We love the sound of it. Um, Sensory plantings, like uh, I would say lavender. Like, lavender is a really well-known kind of therapeutic plant because of its fragrance and whatnot. But sensory plants can be all sorts of different things. Maybe you really like vibrant colors and you plant poppies and delphinium and all sorts of fun things. You just have to have a little space to do this, but it's a space that you can look at and feel good about. And so I would really say it's the same process and starting point as it is for when you're designing for kids. What do you love to do? For you, what would make it irresistible? Put your phone down, or at least on airplane mode, and go outside and just be for a while. So what does that look like? Is it a hammock? Um, so yeah. So I would say it's, take a few minutes to really think about something that would make you happy and give you joy and feed your spirit, and just go do it and make it small. Just start with one feature for you. And you'll probably find that the whole family will want to be out there. It might not be me space for long, but you'll find pockets of me space with it.
Yeah, yeah. And it just makes me think of all those sensory needs, right? Like the hammock is the adult version of meeting those sensory needs. I mean, kids
Oh
need them
yeah.
too, but it's
Oh
like the more
yeah.
acceptable, quote unquote, adult version of it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I love it. I actually have one that lives in my office generally, and then in the
Ooh,
summer I have a little deck just outside my office that it sits in, and that's like where I
nice.
go and like just
Oh, it's
in
perfect.
between
Yeah.
meetings or things that I have to do and just
Yeah.
reset. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's great. I love that. All right, we need to finish things up here. What is one final thing, that tip that you would give to the moms that are listening?
Oh, man, that's a broad question.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna go broad with my answer as well, because I think it would suit them in their lives as women and people, and for their kids, is that just to find as much time in the day, well, to be outside for sure, But if you can be present and focus on what you're doing and just bring as much presence and focus to just each and every little thing throughout your day, I think that just in and of itself brings more joy and fulfillment because your brain and your systems aren't pulled in so many different directions. And so if you're with your kids, be with your kids, put the phone down. If you're gardening, be with the garden. If you're working, be with your work and don't be somewhere else because that pulls you apart energetically. And so if you can bring all that back to you and your energy in the here and now, like now is the magical moment. And so if you can do that, you're going to be able to give 110% to that one thing. And then when you're done, be done with it and move on to the next thing and give that 110% that thing. And your life will shift. If you can just be present as much as possible,
Yeah,
your
that's
life will shift.
beautiful. And I think
Yeah.
so often our goal in life, I know mine intention at the moment is to just slow down life for our family. But
Yeah.
everything, that tip, that thing you just described is slowing down
Yeah.
without even changing
It is.
anything else, right?
Right.
That is slowing down, even if you're doing the
Yeah.
same thing. And
Yeah.
future thinking and past thinking brings on anxiety and concern and
I
worry.
know. And you
So,
can't do anything about it either.
and I'll put out there that it's really, really hard for us to do this. It's a wonderful tip, and let's take the tiniest steps to do that. So when we catch
Yes.
ourselves going off track, because we will, because we're
Yep.
human, then we bring
Absolutely.
ourselves back in and say, actually, my focus is on this conversation I'm having right now, or this,
Yeah.
or my focus is on this garden, or whatever it might be that we're doing. And
Yeah.
I think that is so wonderful. Okay, so tell us where we can find you.
Oh, okay. My website is N is for natureplay.com. And there's actually a free download that folks can get to have that first starting point, like what are my kids' interests and love, etc., to get them going on creating a play and learning landscape. You can also find me on Facebook. Just search for N is for Nature Play. I have a business page, and then I would invite your listeners to join I just started maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, a private Facebook group called Sensory Rich Nature Play. They can search for that and join. And that's where kind of all the fun stuff's happening. Lots of ideas, lots of information, resources, etc., for supporting folks in creating sensory rich environments for kids and themselves. So that's,
Amazing.
yeah, that's my main spots.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And please do go and check out what Jena is doing. I can see her right now while I'm talking to her, and she has this beautiful image in her background of her garden and what she's created. And you can see those images on the Facebook page and definitely the group.
Yep.
And I'm part of them. And I highly recommend checking that out to get your ideas flowing, whether you're a mom, well, a lot of you will be moms, but also whether you work in a childcare setting, or you're just looking for yourself, like I need to create a space in my garden for
Yeah.
me, then all of the above is such a welcoming space in there and full of great info and inspiration. So thank you, Jenna, for joining us today. And I think we might have to come back to get some more detail about tons of other things in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I had so much fun talking with you, Mill, always.
Amazing. I just love talking to Jenna about her big, audacious dreams and how that looks for her. There's a couple things that really stand out to me in what she was talking about. One is that being a landscape architect, I've never thought about the fact that someone designs the places that our children play and have so much intention behind it. And I love the intention that clearly is behind everything that Jenna does. And taking that into people's gardens, and now with her work and her big dream, basically creating this job through her business that is helping families and childcare centers to really design a space that makes a difference to their kids and that fits really well, brings in that nature, is just incredible. I think that's so awesome and such a good example of how we can create a job based on our experience that is perfect for us. And the other thing I really love about what Jena said is learning about these different senses that we have. And it's more than our touch and smell and hearing and such, right? And I think that's so important. As a mom, I find it absolutely fascinating to think about how I can best create a space for my children, but also for myself, right? So, like, there's a reason I have a hammock in my space in my office because sometimes I just really feel the need to be kind of hugged in a lie down position. And so I go in there and I don't want to swing it. Because I just get dizzy now, but as a kid I do, and my kids come in, and my son actually flips himself upside down on it, and anyways, the point is, I think it's really, really amazing information that Jena's given us there. And I am so excited that she was able to share that with all of you. I do hope that you've taken something away from this conversation here today in terms of your kids' needs and designing their spaces, but also your own needs and designing your spaces, as well as just having inspiration from another mom who has really created the life that works best for her and her family. And you can do that too. If you liked this episode, then you must like nature. And the science shows us that nature can make a positive influence on our emotions and life. So if you liked this episode, listen to the last one and take part in our Permission to Notice Nature 10-day challenge. All you have to do is just notice the nature around you each day and take a picture of something you see in nature, even if it's the plant sitting behind you at your desk. Then post it with hashtag Permission to Notice Nature on Facebook or Instagram and join the party and just start to feel better. See you there. That is it, folks. This has been Mel Finlater on Permission to Be Human, the podcast, and I am so glad that you have joined us here today and hope that you have taken away some tidbits that will help you go away, connect with your big, audacious dream, and make that massive impact in the world that you are dying to make. If you liked today's episode, please, please, please like it, share it. Think of one person that you think would also like it and send it on over to them. Let's get this out there and more moms feeling like themselves, inspired, dreaming big, and out there being them. Please do head on over to find me on Facebook with Permission to Be Human or Instagram, or you can even pop me an email and say hello at permissiontobehumanalways@gmail.com. Say hello and let me know that you listened. What did you like about it? I would love to hear. If you didn't like it, I don't really want to know. Just kidding. You can share that if you want. I would love to know, however, who you are. Let's connect. Let's find out what you want more of. Yes, this is a newer podcast, so I want to hear from you and I want to make it what would be useful to you. As always, remember that you have permission to dream big, permission to feel big, and permission to be you. You have complete and full permission to be human. For real, you do.